It's been a long time since I've done an FTV video. I wanted to find a movie that was pretty new, but also that most people don't even remember or even seen the film. And that brought me to Boss Level. Now, the name of the movie doesn't really help tell you what it's about. Boss Level is a time travel movie, but not just a time travel movie. It's also a video game-esque movie. It blends multiple genres together. It's a mixture of John Wick, 1201. Now, if you haven't seen that film, I have actually reviewed that, so check out that video. A mixture of Groundhog Day and Scott Pilgrim. It kind of makes it difficult to classify where this film falls into. Is it a video game movie? Is it, an action film like John Wick? Me, personally, I do fit it in as a time travel story. Well, really, actually a time loop story. But you can actually like it for all the other genre types that they included together. With so many time loop movies out there, what does Boss Level bring? This is where the video game side comes into play. Mixing a time loop story with games is odd. Even the trailer doesn't show the side. Clearly, they were scared of it. The film actually works pretty well for the mixture of the genres. It does throw you off guard. It is a serious film. The movie has a lot of emotional moments, but it does also have a very comedic side. This can make or break the movie for you.
I am Guan Yin, and Guan Yin has done this.
Now, probably half of you are thinking, is the video game stuff just put in there for laughs, or is it genuine? I remember those shows that you see someone playing Game Boy and they got no cart in there. Yeah. Boss Level does it okay. It's a part of the story for one, and they do respect games, but at the same time, they will poke fun at its cliches.
And it doesn't matter what my answer is to him, asking, how can you drink like that? He always launches into this exact same speech.
Now, that's the most important thing about any film. They took the approach of Back to the Future. Keep it simple, keep it fun. The loop connects our four leads: Roy Pulver, the Delta Force soldier, father, and ex-husband; Gemma, Roy's ex-wife, the creator of the time loop device; Venter, the man who wants to use the device to become a dictator by changing history the way he wants; and last, Roy's son, Joe, who gets pulled into this horrific situation. I think it does an actual decent job of feeling very unique. One, mainly because it's an action-adventure show, so it has a lot more action compared to any of the other type of time loop stories. But another thing that I really liked about it is that, unlike a lot of the other past movies where they actually start from the beginning and we get introduced to like the machine that causes the time travel thing, we get thrown into the middle of it. It actually uses the time loop or time travel element to its advantage. Because, we don't have to tell the story exactly in chronological order. Where we start in the story is that Roy is on attempt 120. But what makes it more unique is that we're, going through action scenes. We're getting introduced to Roy and seeing his skills. And it also gives us a chance to get exposition through these scenes so that we don't have to be going through a bogged, really long sequence of like, how does everything form? How do we meet everyone? Because if they actually framed it as a standard film, it would have been fairly boring. A lot of exposition, a lot of stuff would have been set up. With the time loop aspect to the movie, what it also does is kind of turns Roy into a superhero, but without having superpowers. Because ultimately, the reason why Roy is able to do a lot of crazy things is that he's died so many times through the loop. He can try things over and over again until he finally figures out what works. For Boss Level, they did a really good job of giving enough time for Roy, of course, because he's the lead, but also his wife, surprisingly, because she's kind of the main catalyst of why everything happens. She's the one who involved Roy, and because of the situation she was in, she really couldn't say anything to him without tipping off the general. So she had to do all this convoluted stuff. The main objective Roy has is he has to survive. He has to figure out why these people are killing him. And as the story progresses, we actually find out more and more problems he has to deal with, and some twisted things that happen at the end where you go, oh my God. So like no matter what he was doing, there was always going to be another problem right after this issue. As for the bad guy, a lot of times in these time loop stories, they don't really get to really be developed because again, they just this rich billionaire and they invent this machine and they just misuse it and they just screw everything up, and then we have to just stop the machine basically. And in this case, the general in this movie was done pretty good. He pretty much feels like, Albert Wesker. For all intents and purposes, if Roy didn't have the chance to repeat this day over and over and over again, the general won. Unlike a lot of villains out there, especially in Marvel movies today, where they do like tons of dumb mistakes, or they write in a sequence where it's like, oh yeah, they conveniently did something stupid, and then that's how the hero won. This character actually had everything planned out. One, he watched over the wife with cameras, hired like 8 crazy people to get rid of Roy, and these people are like all differently skilled. One loves explosives, one will have swords, others like twins that just shoot him. They're great assassins. So he was not taking any chances of this Roy character. They understood who he was. He was military. On top of it, he also thought of contingency plans. Like I said, Roy has a family, not just his wife, but also a son. The general goes deep in order to get rid of this Roy character. So this is the one aspect of where I really love time travel, because it allowed the villain almost impossible to win against, and it uses it to its advantage. I always hate it when we have a time travel story where they have this power to go back or forward in time and see history and alter it, but they never actually use time travel to an advantage in a way. Like one of the few movies that I ever see use it in an advantage was like Bill and Ted. Remember in the very first Bill and Ted, they were stuck in a situation and they didn't know what to do because they had Ted's father come in and they were like, well, why don't we just simply set up a situation where future Bill will go back into the past and give them a hand, and they basically solve the problem of the film. And I really like those unique ways of using time travel. And in this case, in Boss Level, they did just that. We don't have to tell the entire story in a chronological sequence since we're doing a time loop. As the audience can watch various time loops out of hundreds and hundreds that he's done to see how things occurred. Now another thing that time loop stories give a problem to is that how well do they handle the time loop aspects of it? I think they took a cue from Cause and Effect, that TNG episode, which is pretty famous, and they did it in that way of, okay, we're going to see a sequence that we've seen in the past, but let's shoot it in a way that it's a different angle, so we get to see the same fight over and over again, especially when he first wakes up after dying. 1 minute he'll be funny, 1 minute he'll be serious, 1 minute he'll give up. So it shows all the different stages of Roy's going through time, because again, just like in Groundhog Day, initially you'll be freaked out, but then eventually you'll get comfortable to it, and then you'll understand what your limitations are. And a lot of people out there would take advantage of it, like, ooh, what is it like to kill yourself? You jump off in one loop sequence, but then over time, as you get trapped into this, same day over and over again, it will eat to you. So we go through all the different various stages in really cool ways. As for the video game aspect, like I said, it feels like Scott Pilgrim was their inspiration. There's a lot of elements there. Remember how in Scott Pilgrim they had over-the-top boss fights? Basically the same idea. He was confused on how are they following me, so he has to figure out what's going on. So it's it's part mystery as well as gaining experience. So there's a lot of video game elements in there. He has to manage time. So he can basically turn this into a speed run, because ultimately he's trying to stop everyone killing him and of course save his family. The main thing about it is the boss fight. We have 8 or 9 people that are attempting to kill him in various different ways. What I do really like about each one, they love specific guns, they use RPGs, explosives on Roy. He actually one by one uses either their vehicles or their weapons in order to get further and further into the loop. And if you love video games, whether if you love Defender or if you love Grand Theft Auto, there's a ton of references all over the place, especially when Roy has to invade the Die Now building. It feels very much like if you were in one of the older GTAs like Vice City and you went into the army base and they immediately start attacking you, as well as other times in clothing that Roy has to change into. There are certain outfits that I know that they did was like, oh, this is definitely referencing Uncharted. Ultimately, what I took out from the film the most was that this story kind of helped Roy, because like I said, Roy has his flaws. He loved working in the military, but it became so much where he's just always away. And, again, it caused that detriment of his family being separated, including his son. His son didn't even know who he was. The time travel loop gave him a chance to actually know his son. Now, if you don't want to know any of the spoilers of the film, skip this part of the video. We all know the time loop, it has to be stopped by Roy. And the only way for that to happen is for him to basically get to the machine. But the problem is the machine was created by his wife, and she did something to it. So the main thing that Roy had to do was prevent his wife's death so she couldn't actually tell him what to do. The ultimate twist that the movie does is that we have no idea what happens at the end. He goes into the machine, and that's where it ends. We have no resolution to the story. There's actually 2 endings, depending if you watch the US version or international version, but both have the same outcome of not knowing Roy's fate. The US ending has Roy reset the loop where he has to do everything over one more time, but he has no out. If he screws up and dies, that's it. I was really pissed off that the movie didn't give you an ending to it. What is my personal thoughts on like what happens to Roy and how did the movie end? I personally believe Roy did save the Earth. The machine did stop. He, resealed the fracture of the space-time continuum, but I think he died in the process. Throughout the film, we've seen Roy die. He's accepted death. He redeemed himself with his family, his son, his wife. Stop these bad guys. The movie is not kind to Roy. We've seen him die in very gruesome ways, so they were not afraid of doing a lot of things to him. And for the type of story they were telling, I believe that he did save the day. He died a hero. The US ending gives him more hope since he beat all of this before. I easily see him surviving in this version. Overall, I think this movie was really good. It's very memorable. Like I said, it mixes so many different genres, which is it gives it a leg up because there's been so many time loop stories. It gave it enough unique aspects to it that you can enjoy, especially mixing video game elements to it, which is like completely like a left field, and I was not expecting that. I was like, even the name Boss Level kind of confuses you because I tend to forget the name of the movie. What would a normal time travel movie be called? And they don't do it this time around. Unfortunately, because of the name of the movie, the weird genre choices, not that many people know about this film because it mainly aired on streaming services like Hulu, Amazon Prime. There is a physical release of it on Blu-ray, but it didn't really do much in theaters. Would I recommend the film? I highly do. I would probably give it a 7 out of 10. At some bits, it could be dry. It could go on a little bit too long with exposition, but I think, the movie did need it to flesh out the villain. So if you love time travel or even like Scott Pilgrim, I say definitely give this movie a chance. It may not work for you in every area, like I said, the mixture of genres, but overall, I think you'll find it actually quite enjoyable.